Hey, welcome back to the show. It's me, Hugh, and we're very happy to have Harry Stinson joining us here from Stinson Properties. And Harry, we were just talking. We've had you in the studio before with Dave Grossman, and
Yes.
I saw you present last Thursday, and it was kind of really interesting to hear about the project that you're currently working on. The last I heard, you were doing stuff in Hamilton, and I know you still are.
I still am, yes.
But you're doing this hotel in Buffalo, and it sounds like a really exciting venture. And I'm quite familiar with Buffalo, having spent a lot of time there as a kid. And you were just saying that Buffalo is an interesting town, very different than Toronto, and it's getting more interesting. And do you want to start there maybe? What is happening in Buffalo that's making it more interesting all the time?
Well, we don't appreciate it because to most people, Buffalo is Irv Weinstein on the Channel 7
But we love
urging you to hang in for the news at 7 o'clock when there'll be more fires and devastation. Well, that was Buffalo for many years, and there's a saying in Buffalo that the city was rich at the right time and poor at the right time. And what they mean by that sounds a little weird, but in the early 20th century, Buffalo was one of the wealthiest cities of the world. In fact, it had more millionaires than any city in the world because it was the first city to have electric power on a widespread economic basis from Niagara Falls. As a result, manufacturing in Buffalo exploded in the early 20th century and became pretty prevalent right up until the 50s and 60s. Buffalo was so wealthy that it built an infrastructure of grand buildings and magnificent architecture, and really quite a city that thought it was going to be a many million person city. It never got to that stage, but it built to that expectation. And then what happened in the 50s is that manufacturing started to migrate offshore, and things changed a little bit, and the economy collapsed. But it collapsed so devastatingly, if that's a word, that there was no urban renewal. So what happened in Toronto and in Hamilton to a great extent where, I think wonderful buildings were knocked down with naive belief that this was improvement. And a lot of the buildings from the 60s and 70s certainly were not an improvement, but they destroyed castles and palaces and magnificent structures. Buffalo did not. So Buffalo retained this core of magnificent architecture, and now it is one of those, the last of the Rust Belt cities that is starting to come to life with the revitalization of the downtown, and the grand old buildings are being brought back to life, and they're the ones that are full of people now. And the mundane office buildings, such as they were, that were built in the 60s and 70s, are struggling for tenants. So whether they're churches or buildings or warehouses or whatever, they're the dynamic places, and the core of Buffalo is really coming to life now.
Now, okay, so you mentioned the other day that it was almost an architectural tourist destination.
It is. Architectural tourism in Buffalo is huge because not only they have just a lot of grand buildings, but they have more Frank Lloyd Wright buildings than anywhere except Chicago. And there's one building, the Darwin Martin House, which the city and the state have spent over $20 million restoring, but it already generates more than $20 million a year in tourism, in direct tourism, and is the most admired destination in the city. We are, in fact, at our hotel, building a Frank Lloyd Wright extension to the building, which may seem a little naive, but Frank Lloyd Wright died in 59. In 1958, he designed a wedding chapel, which was going to be built at a hotel in Berkeley, California, as an extension to the hotel. It's like a flying saucer on stilts with a fountain underneath it. It's sort of cool. It's not big. But that design was never built. So we have licensed the rights to that design.
That's actually amazing.
We will have one of the last Frank Lloyd Wright buildings as part of the hotel.
That's very cool. Now, so when is that going to be?
It'll probably be finished by next year.
Are they working on it now?
We've just been finishing. We've got the designs done, and it has to be approved by the foundation. So Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation still has to bless certain parts of it, but the discussion has already occurred. And the interesting thing about the hotel, because this is how we started talking about all this, the hotel we bought is the old Adams Mark Hotel in Buffalo, which that's what people will know it as. It is now being changed to the Buffalo Grand Hotel. It was, and still is, the largest conference event hotel in New York State, not counting casinos, outside of Manhattan. So it's an enormous 7-acre facility, 500 rooms, 72,000 feet of function space, 600-car parking garage, 600 seats in various restaurants. I mean, it is a full-service city unto itself, and still has some unbuilt land that I'm going to put a second wing on. But it's a giant. Well, frankly, when I bought it, it was a giant white elephant. Mm-hmm. It's so big that it doesn't fit in that cookie cutter pigeonhole that the hotel industry has now become, where everything is pretty much a Hilton Garden or a Marriott Courtyard, or even the boutique hotels that become, formula boutique hotels. You've been in one, you've pretty much been into them all. Mm-hmm. That grand hotel that used to be what people thought of as hotels, like the Plaza Hotel of the Royal York, or Savoy, or the just grand places where everything was there and it was a special event.
Yeah,
they don't build them like that anymore.
Right. Now this one, when was it built? Because it looks
79.
like 79.
Brutalist architecture.
Right. Okay. Because
I think that's an oxymoron.
You think about these grand hotels, like you're
Yes.
talking, like the Royal York.
Right.
These are all the older style.
Right.
So this is a modern. You call it brutalist.
Well, that's the style. It literally is. Brutalist was a type of architecture where it's basically concrete panels. It's like the Robarts Library, or
right.
Fort Book, as we called it when I was in there.
Right. Okay.
It's just this monolithic structure.
Yeah.
So but what it does have, which is quite cool, is it has that Las Vegas entrance. It has a big fountain and a circular drive. So there's a sense of arrival, which hotels lack these days. You pull up at the curb and, hope the car doesn't get towed, especially in Toronto. But it has this enormous driveway where we can accommodate, tour buses and lineups of cars to banquets and so on. It has a presence to it, and there's a big glass atrium at the front we're converting into a monolithic bar. Mm-hmm. It's really a massive place. Mm-hmm. The architecture of the original building itself, is essentially a long wall.
I just wonder if that brutalist style might, at some point, looking back at it,
during our lifetime,
be appreciated. I mean, I like the Robarts Library.
The Robarts Library is massive in a way. This is just a long wall. Mm-hmm. But then on top of them, beside that, there was, when it was opened, there was a healthcare center. What do we call it? Health club.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With tennis courts and squash courts and so on. It was a huge, open span building that was a tennis club. Mm-hmm. And a few years after that, ownership changed, and the new owner of the hotel converted into a convention center, which is far more lucrative than tennis clubs.
You mean originally it was just a health club?
Originally, it was a health club.
Oh.
The big conference center beside the hotel was built for tennis courts.
Oh.
With a big parking garage underneath it, which
Okay.
was just a municipal parking garage. The hotel then annexed it, changed the health club or the fitness club into a conference center, which can seat, we have 26 different meeting rooms and ballrooms. So we can go from 20 people to 2,000 people in a room.
But it sounds like whoever did that in 79 or shortly thereafter what were they thinking? I mean, who were they?
Well, they were thinking, originally it was a Hilton. It was
Okay.
built as a Hilton Conference Hotel. And there are ballrooms in the main floor.
Yeah.
But the upper floor of it was this fitness club. Mm-hmm. And the original owner, Clement Chen, who was a fellow from San Francisco, he had the fitness club there. When he sold it, the next owner, who had the Adams Mark chain, he changed it into the conference center. And I think that was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Because it is equivalent in size to the Buffalo Convention Center in terms of its capacity for seating people down for meetings and rooms. But it also has parking, and it has the rooms, and it has the restaurant, and it has everything you want in one place, whereas the Buffalo Convention Center has nothing but one big box.
And this hotel is right in the center of downtown Buffalo, right by the City Hall.
Right behind City Hall. When you're coming through the 190, which is the thruway that goes downtown right through the city, we're right beside it. We really have an on and off ramp right beside us.
And the thing about Buffalo too is the whole city is designed around a central,
spoke, exactly. Hub and spoke system.
Yeah. So you're right there at the center.
All the main streets come right to the hotel.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're right down on the waterfront, what they call Canal Side.
Yeah.
You can walk to the Key Bank Center. Tonight, actually, there's a hockey game. The Sabres are playing, I think, Philadelphia. But whenever they play the Leafs, it's full with Canadians. Mm-hmm. So you can walk to the hockey game, you can walk to the baseball game, you can walk to the theaters, you can walk to City Hall, you can walk to everything downtown from the hotel. It was built as an urban renewal project in 1979. The state sponsored it.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about Buffalo, because you said it was rich at the right time, poor at the right time, and now what's happening in Buffalo? Because
healthcare and education.
Okay.
Healthcare, education, sports, technology, entertainment, architecture, tourism, arts and culture. The old factory and manufacturing element of the economy has now declined. It's not gone, but the steel mills and the big factories are not there.
Is there a Tesla factory?
Yes, there is. There is a 1 million square foot Tesla Solar City plant. We have guys staying at our hotel from Tesla.
Okay. So what are they doing at that particular plant?
Solar panels.
Solar panels. Okay. So that's now. What about the culture in Buffalo? I remember there was there's like a university area.
There are 27 colleges in Buffalo. Education is a big deal. You drive from Main Street from the center core up, and it's college after college after college after college. Canisius has multiple campuses. I mean, it is a big education town.
Now, so would you say the economy is it adding net jobs?
Now it is starting to, yes.
Are people starting to move? Because the population was declining, therefore.
The population was declining, but it was sort of regionally declining. And now what's happening is that the center core, the population is growing consistently in the center core, not so much in the suburbs. Suburbs are still happening, but it's also the demographics are changing. The age range is lower. So you're getting more young people who have come to Buffalo maybe to do their internship at the hospital or whatever, or their education of some kind, and they're staying because they can buy some grand Victorian mansion and walk to the hospital. It's a very livable city.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Buffalo, too, they never got to the stage that Detroit got to.
No.
And so now, before it got to that level of decline, you're saying it's actually starting to, especially downtown, which is good to see. I mean, that's what we have in Toronto. We don't have the donut. And you're saying in Buffalo they don't, the donut.
Well, there are parts. The east part of the city is still scruffy in many respects, where the train station is that I've been working on for some time. But it's the center core and the western side are flourishing. The east is starting to come around bit by bit. You can see the developers are massing things. Very interesting element is Larkin City, or Larkin Village, Larkinville as they call it. The Larkin Soap Company was an enormous mail-order company, equivalent to Sears, about a century ago, and it had this whole complex of massive warehouses just outside of the core, to the east of the core. And Frank Lloyd Wright designed the main offices building. In fact, the only Frank Lloyd Wright building that was demolished in Buffalo was the Larkin Soap Company head office, which was magnificent. But of course, at some point in the 70s, they thought that parking was more important. But the Larkin buildings became vacant when the soap company declined. And a few years ago, a gentleman named Howard Zemsky spontaneously bought the buildings on spec. And they were derelict, massive warehouse buildings. Similar to the way the candy factory was in the Massey Ferguson lands to the west in Toronto. So he bought the buildings and totally renovated them on spec as office space. And it filled up. So you have literally millions of square feet now of funky loft-style offices. And he's bought up all the other buildings in the area, and other developers are buying in the area. So the whole area has become this literal village with a center square and restaurants and diners, and they have their own little shuttle bus to downtown. It's like a London taxi. And it is the most expensive office space in Buffalo. And it's just millions of square feet of office, residential now, commercial, distilleries, arts and culture, banks, healthcare companies, lawyers, filling up the Larkin area.
Now, it just sounds like, and as a developer yourself, who's developed in Toronto, you did One King West, of course.
One King and the Candy Factory and High Park Lofts, etc. But I'm one of those naive off-Broadway characters. I tend to go into an area where I sense that it's about to turn.
Right. Well, that's where the opportunity is, really, right?
It is, but it's a bitch to finance, I'll tell you. Pioneers are not welcome in the real estate industry. In technology, if you're not a pioneer, you're not interesting.
Yeah.
In real estate, it's the other way around. Yeah. If you're a pioneer, you're a crazy person.
But you would think that somehow the city who are concerned about the well-being, the economy, the overall health of the city would be interested in seeing that these kind of projects.
Well, they are, but the city is not in the development business, or shouldn't be in the development business.
Yeah.
In Toronto, with the candy factory, it was observed and watched very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And when the candy factory succeeded,
Mm-hmm.
that's when Barbara Hall brought in the King's policy, which was along King Street, east and west, where you could redevelop with a mixed-use component to it. You didn't have to go through complex rezoning. You could go to committee of adjustment. It's sort of more open season. Bring us your proposals, we'll judge them on their merits, as opposed to the old zoning policy, which is this corner is a gas station, this one is a farmer's market, this is an abattoir. Everything was always fixed because the planners in their wisdom said so. It became more flexible. When the candy factory happened, it opened up in Toronto. In Hamilton, they're still struggling with it. They're just getting there now, despite the proximity. But it's now changing down to Hamilton. Buffalo, the mayor's pretty much stood out of the way. He's been, in that sense, he's been helpful. It's like, go for it. We're here to help. We're not your partners, but we're here to help. Mm-hmm. And Buffalo, I have found far more receptive and easy to work with. Maybe it's the American mentality.
Yeah, I would say that it just seems that in Canada, the default answer seems to always be no.
Yes, that's correct.
And in the U.S., they've always been very good at, at taking on new ideas and doing things in a big way.
They do think bigger, and it is more receptive. It's like, yeah, whatever, let's give it a try.
Yeah.
I found in Hamilton and in Toronto before, it's very much, well, let me tell you why that won't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in the States, it's whatever,
Yeah.
I found it a very friendly environment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. The culture, culturally, how is it different from Toronto? But obviously,
it's a bit more easygoing, though. There's no question that anybody going into another town does have to deal with I won't say hostility, but skepticism. Mm-hmm. And I've been working in the Buffalo-Niagara region now for about 9 years. Mm-hmm. So I've established some connections. I've actually very good connections. I have found that the politicians in these states are far more approachable. You can sit down with them, you can contact them directly and say, look, this is what we're planning on doing. And they'll say, well, okay, I'm not against it, or I am against it, and here's why. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do that, here's what I'd like in return. It's not bribery. It's basically they'll work with you. Mm-hmm. Here, it's like, well, that's nice. Good luck. That's fine. I'm not going to get involved. Everybody's scared of getting involved here.
Now, so I understand that as you've been putting this project together, that you've come up with an innovative I guess it's a way to finance the project, but also a way for people to participate in the project.
Come up with it in the sense that we started this at 1 King West, which was in '97. Okay. So it's been 21 years of learning how to polish this thing, mm-hmm. and it's the same concept. Is that the individual hotel rooms will become condominiums, mm-hmm. and then an individual can buy that unit and become part of the operation of the hotel.
And was that a model that you guys developed from scratch?
Well, it's not that it hasn't been done elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But what I've done with it is a little more sophisticated and actually much more investor-friendly. Most of the models of condo hotels are essentially, there's a development, there's a hotel, and there's a condo in the same development. Mm-hmm. Or more likely, there's a tower, the condo is up here and the hotel is down there, mm-hmm. and there is some rental program. But it generally is not terribly friendly to the condo owners. Not unfriendly, but the amount of revenue you generate would be from your unit alone, mm-hmm. or if the hotel needs extra rooms, mm-hmm. it's sort of you're the last guy to get the money.
Right.
But it's just the room rental itself. And then the split of revenue might be 50-50 or whatever. Whereas we set it up that the entire revenue of the hotel business, which includes parking, with a garage with 617 cars. Mm-hmm. That's a multi-million-dollar business. It includes all the restaurant revenue. It includes, the movies that people deny they order, the dirty movies in the rooms, that they don't order, but do. It includes the weddings and the banquets and the events and everything that comes in the hotel and all of the revenue from all of the suites. So you take 486 suites, which we have. You put all the revenue, all the food and beverage, everything in one pot, all of it. No setting it aside. We don't favor one room versus the other. We don't put the guests in our rooms as a developer versus we put it all together. We put all the costs, take them out of that. So revenue, expenses, what the surplus is then divided on a percentage share to all the unit owners.
Now, I think
In equal percentage share. It doesn't matter where the money came from.
when you were telling your story, when you stayed there one night, that's how you first became acquainted with the hotel. You stayed there, and it was very cheap. And
I'm being an entrepreneur type where I see opportunities in something that apparently is not doing well.
Right.
So
Okay.
I stayed at a hotel simply because I needed a hotel room downtown Buffalo because I was attending some early morning meetings, and I figured, what the hell, I have stuff the day before. And I went online and found this hotel. It's $60 a night. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's by the airport, or maybe there's something really wrong with it, or maybe they got the pictures wrong, or maybe it's $160 and they got it wrong. Something wrong here. But I figured one night, what the hell. So I booked it, and I showed up, and I stayed there, and it was, as promised, in a great location. The rate was the $60. They threw in parking for some reason, and I didn't even ask for it. The internet was free. I came down to pay in the morning, and I said, so I got to grab a coffee or, somewhere in the hotel before I go over to the city hall. And she said, oh, yeah, there's a Tim Hortons up the street. It's like, well, I'm trying to give you money here. I thought when $60, that made me worried about the room. If it was $120, I would have thought that's reasonable for a downtown central hotel. They undervalued it so much that it caused me to be concerned. They didn't charge for the parking, which I would have expected given its central location. I mean, you can walk to the Sabres game in 5 minutes. You can't. Would you be beside the ACC now and give free parking or whatever it's called now, the Rogers Scotiabank Center? It didn't make any sense. So I contacted the owner and said, well, by any chance, are you looking to sell? Because it was clearly absentee management. I thought it was maybe a bunch of dentists who had bought it and didn't know what to do. And they said, sure, we'll sell. It took us a while to negotiate the thing, not because of them, but because financing for something this big in these days is very complex. But the reason was, and the fellows who sold it to us are not, they are professional hoteliers. They have 40 other hotels, but they're all Hilton Garden, Marriott Courtyard, Holiday Inn Express, limited service, handful of staff members, no food service, heads in beds. This is a village with over 200 people on staff and multiple businesses and income streams. You cannot manage this by email from another city, which is where they were.
So just now this is a Canadian company that is it a Canadian condo corporation or
no? It's a corporation. It will be a U.S. condominium corporation.
Okay,
but the company they're buying from is a Canadian company.
So this is an opportunity, particularly for Canadian investors, they can buy into this.
Buy into this, and remember, our customers are paying in American dollars. They're paying $100,099 for their suite, but our customers are paying, essentially $1.30 when they stay at the hotel.
But the Canadian investors, are investing with Canadian dollars, right? So it's
what we did, the spin that we put on it here, which we did not have at One King, and there's a lot of things we learned from One King, a lot, is that we managed to make the whole program RSP and TFSA eligible. And that's been where most of our investors have come from. They not only are sitting with RSPs that are essentially flat, but they're boring and incomprehensible. I mean, who understands Bitcoin or hedge funds or just the whole financial world makes no sense anymore. People are just happy if they don't lose their money these days, which is pathetic. But that's the reality. So you say, well, okay, you're going to make a good return on this. You own an asset. It's not a timeshare. You own a unit. You can sell the unit. People who bought at One King West originally for $100, $150 are selling their units for $250, $300, $350, $5 or $6 for the larger ones. They've tripled in value, and they're making an over 30% return now, net.
So here's an opportunity for people, because when you're in a place like Toronto, where we're already high, it's hard to imagine us going any higher.
Well, we always say that, we say that when we were 10 years old. Wow, my parents' house was $16,000, and that's outrageous.
but here's a city that's up and coming, right? So there's a real opportunity for growth here. I mean, it's hard to believe even that Buffalo, which is only an hour and a half away, is is in a sense so different than Toronto. In a way, it doesn't make sense, but
it's the same in the sense that if you're, it's essentially the same language, culture. It's very familiar. It's not like you're going to China and breathing the pollution and struggling with the considerations that are over there. A friend of mine just came back, and he said, "I'm so glad to be back."
Well, they've got they've got that architecture that they didn't tear down because they were poor.
It's a magnificent city, and you notice it when you come out of Toronto, which is just shiny boxes everywhere. Mm-hmm. And, if there's some historic building, it's sort of a mournful facade glued onto the front of some massive tower. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Buffalo, the massive tower is an Art Deco landmark with limestone and copper roofs. And, it's just breathtaking to walk around.
So if people are interested, they can go and book a room, right? And go take a look at the place.
That's the really cool thing. It's real.
And explore the city.
That's what I really enjoy about it, is that it's something like tangible, real. You can actually sit in the lobby and say, "Oh, okay, I get it. I understand the business." We're not handing you a package and saying, "See this nice glossy picture of the fancy building with the blue skies and the young people that are all in." This is an actual building that's operating today.
Mm-hmm. And a business that's operating.
Today. So you can sit in the restaurant. You can see the events happening. You can, look into the banquet hall and see what we're doing. New Year's Eve party. We're doing, we're doing interesting things there.
Well, it sounds great.
Meet the staff.
It sounds like a really exciting project. You're probably thrilled to be doing this right now.
I'm so thrilled to do it because, and this sounds corny, but the development business is such a slow business. Yeah. And when you get into I'm in my 60s now. I'm sick and tired of businesses that take 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. I like something today. Mm-hmm. You can actually see the results. You can feel the vibe of it. That's what was so fulfilling about One King West. Is that it wasn't just a condo. You turn over the keys and that's it. Mm. You had a life, and it's getting better and better.
So if people want to find out more, or maybe want to go down and visit,
come and see us. We're there 24/7. It is a hotel. StinsonProperties.com.
Okay,
and that's our website.
It's the Buffalo Grand Hotel.
Buffalo Grand Hotel.
Can they get themselves down there for a weekend at the Stinson Properties site, or
all they do is send us an email.
Yeah,
just go through the site or email me directly. I'm harrystinson100@gmail.com. Okay. But I'm not hard to find.
All right. Okay. Well, Harry, listen, great to have this conversation. Thanks for coming in today. Sounds like a great project, and
it's fun.
Best of luck with it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right, we'll be back with more right after this on liquidlunch.channel.com.